Can someone unmute and say, because I have the PPT on my screen, so I'm not able to see the chat box. Is my screen visible? Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, you are audible.
And my screen is visible?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see the chat box. Okay, I'm audible and my screen is visible. Please let me know if at any time point I become inaudible or my screen becomes stops showing. So I'll just share my screen again. Yeah. So good evening, everyone. So this is the first live session. Not the first. I think you guys had a live session from the course instructor a few days back. I think Sunday or Saturday. This is one of the live sessions, and my name is Aishi, and I'm a PMRF research scholar from IIT Bombay. And welcome to the course Introduction to Professional Scientific Communication. Today we'll be discussing some of the practice problems from the practice assignments, and hopefully solving these problems will help you guys in solving this year's assignment problems. So sorry, I'll have to admit. Yeah. So my name is Aishi, and we'll be solving some problems together. And I want to say before everything that this is not really that kind of a knowledge-based course. I mean, what I mean to say is that it's more it's relying more on behavioral techniques. Like it's not a knowledge-based course like physics, chemistry, maths, biology, or any of the subjects. It's more about how you professionally communicate in science and all. So there'll be I believe there's not only one correct answer. There are many there can be many correct answers because nothing has been written on stone. So please do feel free to write in the chat box or maybe unmute and let me know if you have any doubts. And don't unmute all at once, then that will be a chaos. But let me know if you have any questions or queries, and we can maybe solve those together as well. So I'll move on to the first question. So this is very easy. Scientific literature includes. So does anybody want to unmute and say, what do you think scientific literature when we say? Sorry, yeah.
All
Did you
of
say all
these.
of these? Yeah.
All of these.
So yeah, that's very basic. So scientific literature includes research papers. Sorry, I have to. So sorry guys, there'll be a little bit of interruptions because I'll have to admit everyone who joins in the middle. So yeah. So obviously, we read research papers. Research people work in the lab. They design hypotheses. They work on those, and then they finally, when they get results, they publish papers. So obviously, research papers will belong to scientific literature. We have scientific books. When professors and when they're established professors, they have been working in a particular domain for a really long time. For example, if someone has been working in Mycobacterium tuberculosis for a very long time, they get invitations to write chapters in books, and then they can actually talk to their PhD students, and even PhD students sometimes help them write books. So obviously scientific books is also part of scientific literature. Then obviously there are peer-reviewed online repositories for scientific reports. Some may not be published in journals. Some even may not be peer-reviewed. But here in the option it's peer-reviewed. But it's peer-reviewed online repositories for scientific reports, articles of some sort, not exactly published in research papers, but then those are also still considered as scientific literature. We have conference papers, we have journal papers, all of these are scientific literature. So yes, the answer will be all of this, someone said, and it's correct. We'll move on to the next question. Which one of the following is an example of oral communication? Anyone?
Presentation in the meeting.
Yeah. So this is also very basic. Oral means when you're speaking, when you're communicating with your voice. Articles in newspapers, obviously you need to read it. I believe you won't read it out in public. You can, but out of the options that's given, articles and pamphlets are more of written communication that you write and you give information to other people. When you're presenting in a meeting, you obviously have a slide deck or anything, and you're talking about the slide deck in your own words. So that's you're obviously communicating with your voice. So that's an example of oral communication. Yeah. So where do research ideas come from? Anybody?
All of these.
Yeah. So this is also quite basic. Some people experience certain things in their life and they try to solve a problem, they feel that there is a gap in some kind of knowledge, they feel there's a gap that can be solved, then that's how research ideas come out of professional or personal experience. Obviously literature and theory, it's like basic. When you join a lab, when you know that a lab is working on a particular domain, on a subject, you have to basically do a literature review of whatever has been published, and then when you read through, it takes a lot of experience, it won't come. When you read through, you realize there are a lot of gaps, and those gaps you can work on. So that's how research ideas come up. So obviously all of these, you have to admit.
You can give the access to somebody else so that
Yeah, I
you
was
don't get
thinking,
bothered.
yeah, I think that's a good idea. How to do that? Well, I'm not really host management. Which option? This is this. Wait 1 second. Who was it? Who was the one who was speaking right now? Can I make you co-host?
I'm using my mobile.
Okay,
Better you
okay.
make
Anybody
somebody
who's
else.
willing
Yeah,
to
yeah.
be a
Sorry.
co-host can accept participants. If you're on your laptop, that's preferred.
Yes, sure. My name is Josna.
Okay, okay. Sure, I'll make you a co-host. Maybe you can add participants. I understand it's very disturbing when I have to come back every time. So yeah. So research ideas also, these also come from, screen is visible, right? I share my screen again.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So research ideas also come from all of these: personal, professional experience, literature or theory, definitely. So all of these. So which of the following options represent the correct choice for the mode of scientific communication? Anybody?
All of these.
All of these.
Yeah.
All of these.
Yeah. So verbal communication, obviously, visual communication when you present things in conferences, slides, everything. Even non-verbal communication works. So whenever you're trying, even in scientific world, all of these can be used to communicate when you're presenting your ideas. So obviously all of these. So next question: which one of the following options is considered to be important for an effective oral presentation of your research work? Anybody?
All of this.
Yeah. So all of these. So whenever you're making a presentation, at first, what I have learned from my own presentations is that structure to the presentation is very important. Also, you need to keep it very simple. It also depends upon the kind of audience. If you're presenting to professors from your own field, I think you can make it more technical. But if you're presenting to students of your lab or juniors, people who have in your lab will have some kind of idea if they're working in something parallel to what you're working on. But if you're working on something and you're actually explaining it to other people from other are you able to accept?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
I'm
Okay, okay. Thank you so much. So, and when you're talking to people who are not from your domain, who do not know anything about your stuff, you need to explain in a very layman's language to make them to keep. Basically, you have to keep it simple. Also, keeping the audience engaged is an art. I think not everyone has it. Even if you are explaining to a very an audience who understands what you're explaining, still keeping the audience engaged is an actual art. And when you're making presentations, I think instead of writing a lot of stuff in the slides, visual appeal is more important for presentations, because presentation may if people waste a lot of time reading through your presentation, they'll not really listen to what you're saying. So the main objective of the presentation is putting up pictures or visual representation on your slides and speaking whatever you want to explain. So that is one thing that I have learned from my presentations. One of the mistakes that I did: please do not write a lot of stuff on your presentations. Keep it simple. Write 1 or 2 sentences max. Give visual representations and talk and speak. If someone is reading, they'll not listen, but if someone is seeing, they'll try to relate what you're saying to what they are seeing. So that's how it works. Also, when you're making presentations, try to keep all the slides linked. Like you're explaining one thing in one slide, the next slide you're going to a completely different topic. That doesn't help when you're presenting, be it be it in a conference or be it in your own lab meeting or be it in your annual progress seminar, anywhere. Just try to keep your slides linked. Even people from your own lab, even your professor might not be sure of the progress that you have made so long, so try to keep it very linked so that anybody can understand. That's all. So next question, the image given below represents which one is the correct answer, do you think?
Visual communication.
Correct. It's
Visual
visual
communication.
yeah, it's visual communication. Nobody is speaking over here, and nothing is written over here. It's basically visual communication. However we go outside and we see the arrows and the directions on the road, it's all visual communication, and it's quite universal all over the world. You can see these lines anywhere, see these signs anywhere, and you know what it means. So I'll move on to the next slide. Which one of the following is necessary for conducting a research study? What do you think is necessary? I think they have
All
to
of these.
all of these. Yeah. Anybody else would like to answer, or anybody else would like to put a point? Anything is fine. So yeah, the answer is all of these. So when you're starting a research, obviously you have to go through literature review, literature survey. Then you're basically asking a question. You're asking a question, then you're forming a hypothesis. Then obviously you're doing the work. You're designing the experiment. You're defining your work. You're designing the experiments. You're carrying out the work. You're reading. Also, if you're the first person in the lab to do the work, nobody has optimized the experiments, then you have to again go back to literature, and then you have to see if people have worked on something similar. I'm pretty sure they won't have worked on the exact thing that you're planning to do, otherwise there's no novelty. If you have to go back and see if people have worked on something similar, and if they have worked on something similar, you have to see how they have optimized the results, and then you have to figure out the optimization yourself. Once your experiments are optimized, I think I won't say it's easier, but the progress happens faster, but the optimization process takes a lot of time. So obviously, yes, in this question all of these things are very necessary for conducting a research study. Asking a question, interpretation of results. First is asking a question, for then proposing a hypothesis, then obviously work, and then after you are done with the work, you'll interpret the results, and then maybe you'll have to repeat again, or you'll have to figure out a new way of doing the work. So yes, all of these are true. So which one of the following is not a scientific approach? Anybody?
Articulating the expectation.
Okay. Anybody else?
Rejecting the findings.
Okay. Can you two explain why did you select these? It's like why, what made you think that this might be the answer? Okay, I'll explain. It's rejecting the findings, but when someone said articulating the expectation, I kind of agree with what you're saying. If you are working on an experiment and if you have already biased results in your mind, it's not right. Even I feel so. You're also correct. But when I'm seeing all the options together, I think rejecting the findings is more relevant to the question. Because sometimes when we are working on experiments, we have a hypothesis that we are very excited about, and it doesn't turn out the way we want to, and then we think that this rejecting the findings is basically wrong, because even negative results are results. That's what I'm trying to say. So I want to tell a story. When I was doing my master's, one of our course professors said this story. So she was in the PhD defense committee of one of the students that she was talking about, and that student defended his thesis and everything. He got the doctorate and everything, but he still did not look happy. So that professor, she was in the committee, so she was asking his guide that he defended his thesis, it's a long process of 5-6 years, he's finally done, and why doesn't he look happy? So the professor, his guide, replied that when we started out with his PhD, we had a list of hypotheses, we had a list of things that we wanted to prove, and we were quite sure that because of some of the work of the previous PhDs from his lab, he was continuing some of the work, and when they started out, they were quite sure that these will be the results. But after all these years, most of his results turned out in the other way. So he was of the opinion that his PhD doesn't, like, he was not really satisfied with the work that he has done, because he could not prove what he had thought about before. But that's wrong, right? Because you actually worked hard and you found something, and you're basically what will I say, you're not giving that finding any importance. So rejecting the findings is wrong. Even when we are starting experiment, we have some sort of biasness in our mind. That's definitely based on literature review, based on whatever the other students in our lab has done. Even I have some sort of biasness that if I do this should be the outcome. But when somebody said articulating the expectation, I think she meant this only. So that is also not a very good scientific approach. You can expect some things to happen based on your own previous results, but if you are expecting that thing to happen, you kind of have a biasness towards that result, and you get more prone to rejecting the actual findings that you get. So out of these two options, obviously investigating the known and defining the problem, they are in scientific approach. But rejecting the findings is definitely wrong. Whatever you are finding, you should definitely write it down, and you should definitely think more about it. Articulating the expectation is also kind of, if that's what they're trying to mean, it's also kind of not the exact approach that one should follow in science. We all do the mistake, but don't be biased when you're starting out an experiment. Keep an open mind, because you'll do the experiment and then you'll get the result. It's not the other way around. So yes, so I'll move on to the next question. Enquiry wheel is a representation of various stages of scientific inquiry. Which are one of the following options is considered as the core of the inquiry wheel?
Asking questions.
Okay, anyone? Yeah, it's definitely asking questions. Inquiry means, inquiry basically means asking questions. So when it represents the various stages of scientific inquiry, the first thing that you should do, apart from literature review, is asking questions. Why does this happen? And right now we have a lot of we have gone through a lot of scientific advances, and we have the privilege of going online, typing on Google Scholar, and if we don't find a paper, we have Sci-Hub and all these websites we can check a paper. But imagine the time when science was actually starting out, when people, way back when cell was discovered, or when Anton van Leeuwenhoek discovered cell, or when Robert Hooke saw it under the microscope. At that time, science was not there. Science was not very prominent in the environment, like around in your surroundings. So at that time, the only thing that mattered was asking questions. If Newton hadn't asked why apple is falling down, nothing would have happened. Today we have a lot of literature thing to go back to and look. We'll type and we'll see if people have published work on this before. But at that time there was nothing like that. So I think asking questions is definitely the core of any scientific inquiry. Even today we ask questions, but it's more prominent before, when science was just starting out. So yes, asking questions will be the answer. I'll move on to the next question. Which of the following sequence is true for inductive reasoning? So there are two types of reasonings, inductive and deductive. I think this was covered in the lecture. So which one of the following sequence is true for inductive reasoning? Anybody?
Observation, pattern, hypothesis, and theory.
Okay. Anybody else? Yeah. So you're correct. So inductive reasoning and deductive reasoning. In inductive reasoning, you first observe, then you try to figure out the pattern, then you form the hypothesis, and then you go back and relate to theory. Deductive reasoning is actually the opposite. You first form an hypothesis and then you move towards observation. So yes, inductive reasoning is whatever she said is the correct option. So the next question is the statement all bats are mammals. Diphylla equidata is a bat. I guess it's a scientific name. Therefore, this is a mammal. Is an example of anybody? Try.
It's inductive reasoning.
Okay. It's a deductive reasoning because you have the statement that all bats are mammals.
Theory.
And then you are moving ahead and you know that this particular scientific name Diphylla equidata is a bat, and then you are coming back to the you're first observing you are forming the you have the hypothesis first, and then you're deducing that all bats are mammals. This thing is a bat, this scientific name is a bat, therefore this should be also a mammal. So at first you are providing a hypothesis, then basically you're going back and you're deducing the stuff. So this can be called an example of deductive reasoning. So we'll move the next question. A well substantiated explanation of some aspect of the natural world is a
Law.
sorry, what did you say?
Law.
It's
Theory.
theory. Yeah. So a well substantiated explanation of some aspect, yeah, I can understand why you said law, but when you say law, it goes like nobody has ever, like, there is no chance to ever question that thing ever. I understand it's written well substantiated explanation, but then the difference between theory and law will be that when some aspect some aspect has been researched about, or some aspect have been read about, it's mostly called a theory. When you call it a law, it's actually beyond any questioning or stuff. So according to these four options, I think theory might be more relevant. Law is a more how will I say, a stronger word that does not fit exactly in this question, because when when people have worked so hard on something that not hard, I'll say, when people have stopped questioning something because it has been proved so well, that's when it becomes a law. But well substantiated is not exactly that kind of strong a statement to relate to law. So I think it's more of a theory than law, but I understand what you meant when you said law. I'll move on to the next question. A scientific law is, anybody? Okay. So all of these. A scientific law is an observation, because something has been observed, and let's take for example Mendel's laws. Mendel worked with pea plants, he observed some things, and then he made kind of law. So it's definitely an observation. Then when he was observing things happening with the pea plants, the gene thing, he added two alleles and everything, he also predicted some kind of thing. At first he observed, then he thought that he calculated everything, and then he thought that this might be the process happening, and then he tried to predict. So that also falls under scientific law. And the most actually the first and the third option are more relevant. A theory explaining why. So law is an observation, and obviously there should be a theory explaining why this thing is a law, why this thing falls in the boundary of science, and why is there any scientific relevance to it. Has there been experiments performed, has there been work shown around that shows that this, what you're saying is happens, and this fact is reproducible. So whatever, like, when we talk about science, when we talk about experiments, when we talk about results, the results have to be reproducible, right? If I say that something is happening, I have to reproduce the results to show that that thing is happening every time I'm doing it. Once might be a coincidence, so twice, even twice might be a coincidence. So we have to show that this thing is reproducible, this thing is happening every time I'm doing this experiment. So that's how that's why scientific reproducibility is so important. So the first and the third options are very relevant. Obviously an observation, a theory explaining why this is happening, basically a hypothesis that this, I have observed this, so I think this is happening, and obviously a prediction of a process that is happening. So scientific law will be kind of all of these. That's why the answer is the option D, all of these. So the next question is, the schematic shown below represents a puzzle pattern wherein the examinee is asked to predict a pattern that may occupy the box with the question mark. Which one of the following options is correct with regard to the method used to arrive at the correct pattern? Anybody?
Inductive reasoning.
Yeah, you're correct, because he's observing the patterns first. He's trying to observe all the patterns, which ones are colored, what are the shapes, and he's trying to figure out if there is some kind of repetitive sequence that is coming. So he's observing first the observation is coming first, and then the rest of the process is happening. So that's how inductive reasoning goes, as we talked about before. So it's inductive reasoning. So the next is, which one of the following options is correct with regard to the type of communication that the image shown here represents? Anybody?
Non-verbal.
Yeah, non-verbal, because these people are showing different expressions. So when I saw this image for the first time, I thought it was a Zoom call, so I was kind of confused, but then I realized these people are showing different kind of expressions. So this is an example of a non-verbal communication. So just by looking at their faces, you can predict, like you can predict what emotion they might be feeling. Someone is smiling, someone looks really angry, someone looks confused, someone is sad. So this is definitely not verbal communication. Nobody is speaking out, nobody is writing anything, no written, no oral communication. This is an example of visual communication, oh sorry, non-verbal communication, because you're seeing someone and you're able to figure out what kind of emotion that person is going through at that point of time. So this is the next question. A dash is an explanation for an observed phenomenon. It can be tested and can be proven wrong.
Hypothesis.
Okay. Anybody else? Correct. So obviously hypothesis. So when you are working on, when you go through literature review and you read a lot of stuff, you find the gap in the research work that has already been done or already been published, then you find that this thing, I think this thing has not been addressed yet. Why is this protein going to this place and not that place? So I want to work on that. So you form a hypothesis that my hypothesis is that when I treat my cells with this thing, with this drug, this protein secretion, this protein synthesis is inhibited, and that is why this protein is going to this place and not that place. That is kind of a hypothesis. So when you start your work, you kind of have an hypothesis which you start your work with, and obviously it can be tested and can be proven wrong. So that's what I said when I said don't have a biased expectation in your mind. Obviously you need to have a hypothesis. That's how you start your research work, but then don't be biased. Even if your hypothesis proved wrong, even that is a finding, even that is a major finding. So don't be hesitant in showing that to the world also. I have seen people actually like they are like my hypothesis has not been proved right, so they're quite hesitant in showing their work, but that is not the case. So even if your hypothesis doesn't work out, it is called an hypothesis because it has not been proved yet. It needs to be tested and it can be proven wrong. That's how it works. So it is not law, that's why it's called hypothesis. So yes, the answer for this will be hypothesis. So identify the option which depicts the correct order of the key points for writing a good abstract. Very important. Anybody?
Context.
Okay.
Need, task, and outcome.
So whenever we are writing an abstract, I guess they mean for a research journal. So whenever people finish working on a manuscript, like paper that they want to send out for publication, what I have seen people do is that they work on the methodologies, they work on the materials, they work on the graphs and everything. Then they work on the statistics if they want to do anything. Then they work on everything, conclusion, everything. They write the abstract last, and that is very crucial. I don't know if everybody follows the same procedure. I have seen many people do this, and I get why they do this, because writing the abstract is the first thing that you see when you open a paper. Even papers that are not available without subscription, even those papers you can actually still read the abstract. And abstract can make or break your journal paper, because if someone needs to read your paper, they'll read it, no doubt. But if someone has to read your paper and if the abstract doesn't interest him or her, they'll stop reading the paper. When I'm reading the paper, I go through the abstract first. I skim. Nobody reads the entire paper in one go. Maybe you have done really fascinating, really interesting, groundbreaking research, but if the abstract is boring and very long, very complicated, people will lose interest. Nobody will read it. So how do people read papers for the first time? I have seen many people do this. They read the abstract first, then they skim through the diagrams. They don't read the paper, they skim through the diagrams, because when you have made it a habit to read papers, you see the diagrams and you're able to figure it out. You see the diagrams, you read the legend below the diagrams, the sketches or the pictures, whatever you have put, graphs or images, confocal, microscope images, whatever you have put, they read the legend, and then they go directly to the discussion and conclusion part. And then if these things interest them, then only they'll go back and read the entire paper. So that's why abstract writing is so important. It has to be concise. It has to be really simple. If I feel things like, if someone has done really fascinating work but the abstract is really complicated, I will stop reading right and there, because it won't engage me anymore. And it's not really an English exam or an English essay writing competition. People will, if you write in crisp language, that will be more fascinating to people than writing in a lot of complicated words if someone has to sit with a dictionary, they'll lose interest. As simple as that. So that's why I want to say that writing an abstract is really important. Even when you're sending out your when you're going to conferences, first an abstract needs to be selected. I think some of you might know that when you're submitting your paper for conferences, they ask you to submit your abstract. They'll go through your abstract, then they'll send you the selection mail. So that's why abstract is so important, and not everybody is from your field. Even the reviewers will not be from your exact field, so your abstract needs to interest them also. So obviously, so the more relevant from this from these few options will be the context. So what is the context? Why are you doing the work that you're doing? A little bit of context. Then need. Why? What is the purpose of your work? Like, people have done all this work, but I think this is the research gap, and I think this is the need of the hour, and this everything happening. This is the context. This is the need of the hour. That's why this work is important. Then you move on to the task. Then you explain how you have tried to address that question. So the contest you have done, people have treated these cells with drugs, and people have seen that the cells change in morphology, blah blah blah. Then you say that people have treated with these drugs, but people have not tried this particular drug, which is a very relevant first line drug. Then I think this is a very important gap that needs to be addressed and can be related to the studies that have been done before. So this is the need of the project. Then you move on to task. So to address that, the authors have done they generally they write in first person. We have done this. We have treated the cells with this drug, and we have seen we have tried to do these experiments. We have tried to do microscopy. We have tried to do facts, blah blah blah. A little bit, very brief, and then you move to the outcome. And from this, 1 or 2 lines of outcome. And from this, we have seen that when we treat the drugs with these, treat the cells with this drug, these are the results, and we can actually relate it to the previous findings. And this opens up a newer scope of research. So that's how you write your abstract. So amongst the 4 options here, this is the most relevant one. So whenever you're writing an abstract, when you're writing a manuscript, you definitely write the abstract the last. You finish the entire manuscript, you get it checked by your supervisor, anyone you want to get it checked by, then you write the abstract. But when you're sending out a paper for journal conferences and stuff, then also abstract is very important. People think it's very short, so you don't need to put a lot of effort. I think that needs a lot of effort, because it makes or breaks your paper. That's what I'm trying to say. So context, need, task, and outcome. This is how you will proceed in your abstract. Or this is not a rule, not a law. So amongst the other 4 options, you can try out those also. But amongst these 4 options, I think this is the most relevant that I could find in these 4 options, because amongst the papers that I've read, I think most people follow this only. They try to go via this sequence only. Obviously, you'll definitely find other papers following the other sequences. Okay. So next question: which one of the following options correctly explains the hourglass model majorly used for writing scientific research articles? So number 1, the hourglass indicates the timelines of the research publication. Number 2, the hourglass represents the difficulty levels of writing material methods. Number 3, the hourglass indicates the relative time that took in obtaining the various results of the study. And number 4, the hourglass represents the broad introduction, focus of the study, its outcome, and the extrapolation of the observations. So what do you think the hourglass model means? Anyone?
It's the 4th option.
That represents the broad introduction, focus of the study, its outcome, and the explanation of the observations. Anybody else? And then show the answer. Yeah, she's correct. And why I'll tell you that. So it's the 4th option that's correct. So acha, I have an hourglass picture over here. I think I moved it somewhere else. Wait. So this is the hourglass image. So this is the hourglass image, and there is a popular process of writing, scientific writing, which is called the hourglass method of writing. So the top of the hourglass is wide. So you can see the top is really wide. So writing will begin with a broad overview of your topic. You'll be going through research articles, literature, you'll be doing literature review. So you'll have a broad overview of the topic. So this is the introduction part. Wait 1 second, I'll do the laser pointer. So this is the introduction part where you'll provide the background of your topic. What is as I said in case of abstract, the context. Why are you so excited to perform this study? So basically the context, the background of your topic, and then you'll introduce some important concepts so that your reader can understand the points that you raised later. So you'll say the context, you'll talk about the need of the study. That is, these things have already been shown. I want to show this, I want to prove this. So that is how your reader will understand the points that you raised later. Later, when you say that I have proved this, they'll be able to understand that this person was trying to prove this from the beginning only, because they have also talked about what has been published before. So that is why the hourglass, this portion is wide. So you'll start with a broad overview. Then the focus of your writing will gradually narrow down and become more specific, and it will cover key ideas relating to your research question. When you first start a literature review, you'll actually feel that there are so many publications out there, how will I narrow down my research? But as and when you keep reading stuff with experience, you'll be able to narrow down your research motive, your research objectives. So you will be then talking about key ideas related to your research question. And once you have covered what is already known, you will begin to state what is not known. When you have already covered what is known, you will say these things are not known within my topic, and my research will seek to answer this unknown question. And this is where the top of the hourglass will start to narrow. The research question is the reason for writing the paper. So you need to be very clear and concise about your aims and what you expect to find based on the previous research that has already been done. And in many cases, this is where basically you're compelling your reader that what you're looking at is important, and you may be taking a specific stance on a topic. You're telling your reader that this is the work that I'm doing and it's very important to prove this. And it is important that your research question is clear and well thought out. And you also need to clearly state the hypothesis, the aim of your work, and everything. Then the middle of the hourglass, the method and the results. This is where you cover the very specific work that you have done. Method and results obviously will be very specific to what you have done. It will not cover a lot of stuff. So it will not be broad overview. So this is very specific to the work that you have done, and it will be important to keep in your mind the research question and think about how your measures, your statistics, your results answer the question that you have put forward in the introduction, or when you are coming from the introduction to the method section. And you'll need to include detailed description of your whatever you have studied, the measures you have taken to eliminate the outliers, why do you think the procedure that you use to conduct the study is relevant and authentic, the statistics that you use to figure out if the difference that you're seeing in the control cells and the drug treated cells is significant or not. So, and the results of all the experiments that you have done, the analysis part, everything. And it is important to include enough detail to allow others to replicate a research. Very important. When I was talking about reproducibility, you have to, when we are reading papers, we are mostly clueless because papers are not well written most of the time, and if we try to replicate the results, we find ourselves in we find ourselves very confused. So your results and methods should be very elaborately explained, so that if someone wants to replicate your work, they can easily do so. Reproduce your work, they can easily do so. And then we move to the bottom of the hourglass, the discussion, and the bottom half of the hourglass is first narrow. See how it is first narrow and then it widens again. Then it again broadens. So we start off with specific information relating to my study. We say that these are the results that I've got and this is how I plan to interpret the results. Then I'll begin to give a summary of my findings. So that is why it's narrow, because my findings are still very specific and narrow. And then I'll gradually start to broaden out and discuss why my findings are relevant to the work that is going around in the world, and where my findings sit within the context of the current scientific knowledge, and remind the reader how the previous research supports what I have found. So I'll relate my results to what has already been published and what can be a future scope of research. And this will help me to discuss the implications of my findings and why they are important. And continuing to broaden out, it will be important to identify thoughts for the future research. Discussion is basically future scope. So this is where I will move on to future scope. And I'll discuss the strengths and limitations of my research. There'll obviously be limitations of my research. I'll discuss that. And then I'll identify other questions. That these questions have been answered, but my findings have raised more questions. And that might be answered using the new information that I have provided. So by the end of my discussion, I'll bring the paper away from the specific focus of my thesis to a more general, broad overview, and I'll place my work in the in the context of broader scientific research that's going on, and general importance of what the research that I have been doing, that people in my field have been doing. So this is how the hourglass of scientific writing works out. So yes, that was the. So this was the correct answer. The hourglass represents the broad introduction, focus of the study, my study, which is very specific to me, and outcome, and then how I'll extrapolate my results in the broad scientific community. Many people are working on mycobacterium. How my work relates to their work is what I'll do at the end. So that is how I broaden my scope, and then I talk about future objectives. So that is what the hourglass way of scientific writing means. Then this next question. Given here is a schematic for 3 commonly used terms in scientific communication. Identify the terms identified as A, B and C based on their characteristics. This is a Venn diagram, and there are three A, B, and C marked terms. There's a little explained what these terms mean, and you have to basically match the explanations with the terminology that is used to address the term with the word. So, what do you think is the correct answer? Anybody?
Facts, hypothesis, and theory.
Okay. Anybody else? So explains, it will be theory, hypothesis, and law. The A is like explains why natural phenomena occur. So that is very theoretical knowledge. This is the reason why natural phenomena occur. So that pertains more to the theoretical perspective. Then B is like can be used to make predictions, can be revised. Obviously, hypothesis, I was talking about this. We predictions is quite relevant, quite equivalent to hypothesis. We are predicting some things, and these can be revised in the future as and how depending on how my work goes. It can be proven wrong, it can be proven right. That's hypothesis. Then C summarizes a set of observations about natural phenomena. So I can see why theory and law can still be very confusing, but in the law it's like a set of observations about natural phenomena, and these things are beyond any scope of questioning or beyond any doubt that these things are happening, and this is the law. So that is why C is more relevant to being called the law, and A is like explaining why things are happening. So that is more theoretical. So but B is for sure hypothesis. So we'll move on to the next question. The structure of the research article can be highlighted using different geometric shapes, mainly to highlight the nature and scope of writing. Which one of the following options correctly paired the section which it resembles? So I just talked about hourglass. There's an upright triangle, inverted triangle. Anybody who would like to take this and try basically? Okay, I'll go.
Can you explain this, Ashi?
Yeah, sure. So hourglass is basically a total research paper. So research paper, how do you start? You start with an abstract, and then you go to the introduction, then you little bit of background that you include in the introduction, then you go to the methods and materials, then you go to the materials and methods basically, then you go to the results, then you go to the discussion, then you go to the conclusion. That is what I explained in the hourglass here. You can see the image of the hourglass, right? So top is a very broad view of your introduction. So whatever has been happening around the world pertaining to your area of research, you explain that. Suppose someone is working on SARS-CoV-2, it is very popular. So you are working SARS-CoV-2. This is why SARS-CoV-2 is very relevant in today's time. You write that in 2019 December this thing, and you write everything about very brief, but you write at least to give the context, to give the reader the context that this is why I'm working on SARS-CoV-2. Then you write since that time there have been a lot of research working on the spike protein. People have worked on the spike protein, this that, and basically you try to give a context, you try to give a background. So this is how you relate to the one second pointer, relate to the hourglass structure. You start with a broad overview, then slowly you move to the methods and results. Then you say that I want to work on this aspect of the spike protein, very specific, very narrow. So you move to the middle of the hourglass, you talk about your own methods, you talk about your own results. The narrow portion of the hourglass is that. Then once you're done explaining your results, you say that these are the results that I have got. You explain your results a little bit, then you try to fit your results in the context of whatever is happening in the world. You say that this et al and this paper, this group from Germany, this group from the US, this group from Japan, they have been working on this stuff, and they have provided these findings. My results have shown this, and I have worked on this particular cell line, they have worked on another cell line. So after the results part, you are trying to put your research results in the context of whatever the Japanese team or the German team they have proved, they have given forward. So then you are again moving from your narrow specific results to how your results relate, how your results can be extrapolated to the other results that other groups are providing. So that's how you move to the broad base again. And then in the discussion section, which is the most broad base, the widest space at the at the below of the hourglass. That's how you discuss. So when you discuss, you say that these were the findings that were there before I started my work. I started my work with this research gap in mind, this question in mind, and then I talk to you about my methods and results. And this is how I interpreted my results, and this is how I put my results in context of the whatever is happening around the world, whatever the other groups are also doing. But my work has also shown some other research gaps that can be addressed in the future. So that's why discussion part is again very broad, because you are putting it out to the world that these are the limitations of my work. I have worked in vitro sample. Maybe you have worked, I'm talking in perspective of biology because I am working with biological samples. So I have done my work in vitro, like I have done my work with mammalian cells, but you won't be able to realize in vivo work like inside mouse model or any other animal model basically is very required. So the limitations of my study is that I have done my work with cells, but probably people should do more work in animals to get a more clearer view of what is happening. And even working in mouse models doesn't necessarily tell you that this is the same way the spike protein will affect humans also. We definitely use mouse models for many stuff, but even then it is very difficult because we cannot really perform experiments on humans like without getting it's obviously unethical. So even after doing experiments on mouse models, we cannot say that this protein is affecting the mouse in this way. Definitely this protein will be affecting the human also the same way, but you cannot say that. But at least you can move ahead and say that this protein is affecting a live animal in this kind of way. So that's how you move ahead. You put out a discussion, you say that these are the limitations of my study. If there's nothing to be ashamed of when you put out the limitations, it means of your study, it means that you know that there was some shortcomings in your work and you're not afraid to put it out. These are the shortcomings of my work. I'll also try to figure things out, but these are the gaps that can be thought of, and from my work I am showing that these are some other research questions that have come out. So this is the hourglass model. The other thing was the upright triangle and the inverted triangle. So the upright triangle will be like this, correct? Is there a screen pointer pen? So the upright triangle will be like this. Sorry, I'm drawing like this, and an inverted triangle will be like this. So here the answer will be upright triangle and discussion. So it's basically what I explained in the hourglass model only. Why does upright triangle mean discussion? Because in the discussion section you're moving from a very narrow portion to a broader base. You're moving from your very narrow specific study findings to the more broader aspect of future scope. You're saying that I have worked with this and then I'll move ahead, and these are the questions that still need to be addressed. So that is how it very clearly represents an upright triangle. But when you're giving an introduction, that's introduction comes at the first of the research paper. Remember, that's the first thing after abstract that you read in a research paper. So when you're giving the introduction, the exact opposite thing happens. You start with a very broad overview. That's why the inverted triangle works out for introduction, the base of the inverted triangle, because you start with a very broad overview. You start saying that SARS-CoV-2 happened in 2019 December, and this is the problem, blah blah blah. So many people were affected, and people with comorbidities are also affected, and this is, you explain in a very broad overview. Then slowly you go to your own objective. You go down and you say that in this respect I would like to see how this protein affects this cell. So that is how you're moving to a more narrow research objective. So the introduction is the first part of the paper, discussion is the last part of the paper. That's why introduction is more like an inverted triangle, broad discussion to narrow objectives, and the discussion is exactly the opposite. You're from narrow specific experiments, specific results, to the wider sense how your experiments fit in the context of the world research, how it opens up newer scopes of research. And the hourglass is basically the entire thing, the entire research paper explained. So this is how the research paper works. So I think I'm clear. If you have any doubts, you can let me know. But the abstract is here, then introduction, then your paper, then the work gets narrowed down, specific, and then you move again to a more wider, broader overview. So that is how the hourglass scheme of writing fits really well into the scope of research papers. Moving on to the next question. A statement, a sound practical judgment concerning everyday matters, or a basic ability to perceive, understand, is often referred as?
Common sense.
Okay. Concerning everyday basic ability to perceive, understand is often referred as? Yes, it's common sense. So this is quite self-explanatory. ability to hear the sound doesn't make any um, doesn't give any meaning in this context, and this is not really that kind of scientific communication. It actually uh, has nothing to do with science, honestly. Sound practical judgment regarding everyday matters wherever you go, people, it's just common sense. So yeah, so this question is very self-explanatory, it's common sense. Then next question, critically review the image. So image, this was the image. Wait one second. Acha, okay, this was them. Okay. Critically review the image given here and identify the line which depicts the hypothesis. Samira's desktop PC monitor turns black and the PC is silent as well. This is the line 1. Line 2 is what could have been wrong with the PC. Line 3, it can be power cut and hence the PC shut down or PC is crashed or it is in hibernate mode. And line 4, also if the power went off, then the fan should not work either. Anybody? Which line do you think depicts the hypothesis?
Line 3.
Line 3.
Yeah. So line 1 is something that has happened. Okay, something has happened. Line 2 is you're asking the question. You're raising the question that what could have happened that the PC has turned black. Line 3 is like you're predicting. As I said before, you're predicting something. It can be a power cut because the PC has also shut down or it has crashed or it is in hibernate mode. It can be power cut, shut down, crash, or hibernate mode. These are the 4 hypotheses that you're putting forward. Any one of them is true, obviously, or it can be something else completely. You're not thinking about it. But then there's line 4. Also, if the power went off, then the fan should not work either. Then you're going to line 4. It is contradicting your hypothesis, the first part of your hypothesis. When you're saying it's the power is being, it may be the issue of power cut. That's why the laptop has turned black. But then the fan should not also be working, but the fan is working. So that is how you figure out that it's definitely not a power cut. It might be the other 3 options: PC shut down, PC crashed, hibernate mode, or something definitely wrong with the PC. So yes, line 3 is the hypothesis. You're predicting something. You are expecting that thing might have happened. It can be proven wrong. It can be proven right. So yes, line 3 is the hypothesis. Which one of the following options is not correct for a good research project? Anybody? Correct.
Should
None of these.
none of these.
None of these.
Yeah, correct. None of these. Obviously, a research project should be verified. When you're working on a project, it should be very authentic. The work, everything that you have done, it needs to be verified. That is why we don't work on one experiment and we don't publish it the next day. Even when you work on an experiment, even when you get the data, you optimize the entire experiment. Even after the optimization process, even when you're getting good data, then also you repeat the experiments. That is why we have replicates. So you repeat the experiment with replicates. You make sure that your experiment is reproducible. The good data that you got is not coincidence or not just luck or fluke factor. So obviously it should be verifiable. And if someone else is trying to replicate your data, they should have similar kind of results. Verifiable. Next is replicable. Obviously, if someone else is trying, that is why I said the abstract and everything should be very concise. But when you're writing the materials and methods, not everyone will read your materials and methods. Materials and methods people will read when they're interested in your paper. So the abstract discussion part should be very crisp and very fascinating, very interesting. And if that holds my interest, then I'll go back and I'll read the entire paper. I'll read the materials and methods also. So the materials and methods should be very, according to me, it should be very elaborate, so that if I want to replicate one of the experiments from there, or if I want to do a similar kind of experiment but maybe with a different protein, I'm able to at least figure out how I should do. That's how that's why papers are published, so that we can learn from those and we can do our work also. So obviously it should be replicable. Defensible, obviously, when someone completes PhD, it's called a PhD defense. It's actually called a PhD defense. So you're defending the work that you have done. You have worked all through, you have data, you have results, you had a hypothesis and you have worked on it, and then you're defending your project in front of a committee. The committee is asking questions. The committee is basically they're asking questions. They're trying to say that this thing is not working, that thing is not working, but it should be you who should be able to defend your work. So obviously a good research project should be defensible, like you should be able to defend your work. So none of these. Next question. In general, research projects follow the same structure known as the hourglass notion of research. Which of the following is the first step of the hourglass notion? I have talked about this 2 times already. So it's a kind of a similar question. What do you think
Begins with the broad questions.
Correct. It begins with a broad question. The hourglass, the top of the hourglass is broad. Obviously, it begins with a broad question. You write the context of the study. You throw a lot of questions, then you start narrowing down. So out of all these, it begins with a broad overview. Question is generally a little bit narrowed, but anyway, out of these four options, the first one seems the most relevant. It begins with a broad overview. Questions, when you talk about questions, it starts getting narrower and narrower. But overview, when you see overview, they're basically trying to say what all has been done in the world, how much work has been done about SARS-CoV-2 already, based on what I am trying to do. So yeah, it begins with a broad
Basically,
overview.
background.
Yeah, basically background introduction, correct, broad overview. Yeah. So next question, the statement Ram has a house. In his house there are 4 bedrooms and a large garden outside. In the garden, Ram has planted many fruit trees. Most of them are apples. The text given in red and the green color fonts represent respectively the following. What do you think the red text represents, and what do you think the green text represents? Anybody?
Is it fact and observation?
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, I don't know. It should be fact and observation.
Given and
New concept. No. It should be fact and observation. Yeah. So Ram has a house.
Yes.
This was incorrect written there. Yeah. So Ram has a house. In his house there are 4 bedrooms. It is a factual knowledge. And in the garden, Ram has planted many fruit trees. That's observation. You are observing that he has planted many fruit trees. So most of them are apples. Yeah. The answer is wrong. It should be fact and observation. I don't know why it's given a new concept. I'll check it once. It's fact and observation, definitely. Next question. Given below are 4 independent statements. Identify the option which is the most appropriate example of a hypothesis. Matter can be converted into energy. Increasing apple consumption in breakfast will decrease the probability of becoming ill. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. The first multicellular organisms appeared on Earth about 60 million years ago.
Second.
Correct.
Probability.
Correct. The matter can be converted. We know that for every action there's an equal. That's a law. That's Newton's third law. For every action there's an equal and opposite reaction. The first multicellular organisms appear on Earth. That's also a factual knowledge. Increasing apple consumption will decrease the probability of becoming ill. So you're assuming, you're predicting based on previous data or based on previous analyzed data or whatever, that increasing apple consumption in breakfast will decrease the probability of becoming ill. So yes, that's the closest to. That's an appropriate example of a hypothesis. So next question, which of the following would be a case of plagiarism? So this goes to the ethical, unethical domain. Dr. X uses data from Dr. Y's study but doesn't cite Dr. Y in the paper. Dr. S does unnecessarily painful tests on rats. Dr. X does unnecessarily painful tests on human children. Dr. X fails to explain to a public audience that the sample size of a study was very small, necessarily limiting the results.
First one.
Correct. So the first one, Dr. Y has already done some studies. He or she has proved this thing, and Dr. X is using the data without any kind of without giving any kind of acknowledgement or any kind of citation to Dr. Y. That is definitely plagiarism, and it is very, very wrong. And if you get caught, it's really very unethical and very wrong in the scientific world. The human children, unnecessarily painful tests on human children, that is unethical. That's an ethical violation. About the rats thing, unnecessarily painful tests on rats, people do work on rats, but even then you have to have a ethical permission to work on animals, like to work on animals in the animal house. So unnecessarily painful tests, I don't know what they're highlighting, unnecessarily painful, or if they're working on rats without taking any kind of permission. And Dr. X fails to explain to a public audience the sample size of a study. So when the sample size of a study is very small, people will raise questions. It is very easy to counter those kind of research work, because when your sample size is small, your work can be kind of coincidence, your analysis can be coincidence, your statistic, when you're analyzing the statistics of your work, it's very prone to being coincidental things. So obviously the biostatistics part of your work needs to be very prominent as well. For this question, plagiarism is definitely Dr. Y. So Dr. Y study, if you're taking data from Dr. Y study, you need to give citation to Dr. Y and his paper or her paper, whatever. So yeah, that's the case of plagiarism, definitely. Yeah, so that's the first answer. Then this is another question, a different aspect of communication. Many employees report to Ananya, the manager of the store. Which approach from the list below works best to let everyone know about the changing duty hours? This is more of professional communication and less of scientific. Which approach do you think works the best if everyone needs to be made aware about the change in duty hours? This is more of professional communication and less of science in it. Anybody? Okay, so it's something, the change in duty hours is something that needs to be made like that everyone needs to be made aware of in the company. So face to face, you cannot meet everyone and tell that person face to face. Business meetings are fine, but then not everyone might be available in the business meetings, and telephoning, it's also very it's not possible to call everyone and tell. So obviously a poster or notice should go out telling everyone that the duty hours have changed. Next question. The vertical flow of communication from lower level to one or more higher levels is dash communication. Anyone? Okay. So it's upward communication. It's a vertical flow of communication. Saying from lower level, I believe when you're talking about lower level to high level, it's among the hierarchies of the professional world. So when it is coming from someone who's a employee to the employer through the various levels of hierarchy, it's mostly called upward communication. Yeah. This is another basic question. The transmission of the receiver's response. I don't think this pertains to scientific communication. I'll just move ahead. Transmission of the receiver's response to the sender is called when the receiver is giving back a note of receiving the communication to the sender. It's called feedback. We have read in others like physics also, there's a feedback loop and everything, so that's how it relates back. It's called a feedback. Next, it's given below are two statements. One is labeled as assertion A and the other is labeled as reason R. Assertion is communication has the power to persuade, inform and disinform, and reasons are the process of propaganda makes the line of distinction transparent between its elements for being persuasive. In the light of the above statements, choose the correct answer from the options given below. Anyone? Okay. So A is true, but R is false. A is true definitely because communication has the power to persuade, inform and disinform. That's the basic motive of communicating. So communication skills, that's why communication skills are very important. The reason R is false because the process of propaganda makes the line of distinction transparent between its elements for being persuasive. It doesn't really make any sense. So basically the process of propaganda actually has no role to play in making the line of distinction transparent between the elements. So R is not quite relevant to the assertion that is being said, and R is definitely false. So next question. The main concept behind doing research is to, these are the four options. Anybody? I'm audible, right? Guys, my screen is visible. I'm audible, right? Anybody? So my screen is visible?
Yes.
Yeah, so there's an issue with the Wi-Fi here, so I'm really sorry for that. Yes. So the main concept behind doing research is to, anybody?
All of the above.
Okay, yeah, even someone is coming. Are you able to admit people?
Yes.
Okay. I thought I need to give co-host facilities again. Okay. So even all of the above makes sense to me also. But when if you're talking about clear-cut objectives, The main concept behind doing research is obviously to have clear cut objectives, but if we talk about the first thing that we have while we are starting research, we generally have new ideas to work with. So that's how I feel all of the above is also correct. As I said, there's no hardcore rule in this course that only one answer is correct. Everything can be all of the above is also fine, but when we are starting out research, I think having new ideas is more important. Then study and explore knowledge that start with predefined and clear cut objectives. We don't really start with the predefined and clear cut objectives. We start with a question, we start with an idea, and then as we move along with our experiments, we it takes time to basically define your objective. That's why a PhD takes at least 5 years in India, because you take almost 1 year to define your objectives. What is the work that you're planning to do? Because in most institutes here, we don't really have a project proposal ready, and just we need to. In institutes abroad, especially in Europe, I've heard that people have proposals and objectives ready. They're only waiting to recruit a student. But here in India, in most cases, that's not the case. There is a lab that's working on a particular matter. There are interviews, people taking students, professors taking students, and then they have to spend quite a lot of time seeing what other works happening in the lab, and then reading papers, and then trying to define their project. So we don't really start with a predefined and clear-cut objective. Here, at least in most institutes in India, might be in Germany or Europe, they have it's more like a job in Europe, because they have a project proposal ready, they have grant money, they just need a student. The student will come and start working from the first day itself. So for the main concept behind doing research is all of the above also works, but clear cut objectives I am pretty sure it comes much later. They come much later in the journey of your project. We don't really start with the clear cut objective, we start with an idea and a question. So yeah, get new ideas is also right. All of the above can also be taken to be correct. Yeah. In order to begin research, one must these are the options. Anybody? Remember, in order to begin research, begin is the keyword.
Solve the research problem.
Okay. But when you're beginning or solving the research problem,
No.
yeah. So when you're starting work in the experimental work, when you're starting research, you have to read a lot of papers, and most of the work happens in your computer. You go online and search. But then when you're actually starting out with your research, like you're starting out with your experiments, at that point of time, you have a little bit of predefined objective. In the last question, I was talking about when you're joining a program, and when you're joining a PhD or a master's or whatever project program, you have to figure out your objective, you have to define your goals, you have one question or two questions in mind, and you do according to that. But after that process is over, when you're starting out your wet lab experiments, if your lab is conducting wet lab experiments, or even if computational lab, when you're starting to work on your own, when you're having your own data, at that point of time, you have a little bit of a predefined objective. And still, I don't really agree with the word predefined too much, because I believe we have a lot of questions in the beginning. Begin research, we don't really begin with predefined objectives, but out of all these 4 options, I think that seemed the most relevant to me, because when you're starting out, you don't have clear goals in your mind. You should not have, because then you're getting biased to one side. It's not like you should not have, you do not have a lot of clear goals in your mind when you're starting out. Have a well-defined research method? Definitely not. You don't have, if your seniors have optimized the process in the lab and you're basically replicating it, then still fine, you have a well-defined research method. Every lab has different protocols. Trust me, if I'm talking about cloning, I'm talking about molecular biology perspective. Cloning is a very, the flowchart of cloning is very known and very popular. People all around the world have been working, but still when I tell you that every molecular biology lab has a different protocol for cloning, not protocol, have a different, how will I say, they have defined their reagents in that way, then trust me, that's true, because they order different labs order different types of reagents. They might be doing cloning, but they might be doing different genes. Obviously, they might be doing with different genes. They might be using different restriction enzymes. So they have optimized the protocol in their way. So So that is how it works out. But cloning is a very popular method. They are all doing cloning, but they have optimized in their way. So if your seniors have optimized the experiment in your lab, then maybe you might have a well-defined research method. Otherwise, if you're doing something completely different from other people in your lab, then you have to figure it out yourself, and it is the hardest part, because you're reading papers and you try to figure out if this will work for you, and you have to optimize everything, and you have very limited reagents, you have very limited slots, instruments. Most expensive instruments are not there in your lab, right? Those most expensive instruments are in the common facilities, and for common facilities you have to book slots. So in most major institutes of the country, so most important instruments like high super resolution microscope and everything, these are common facility instruments. You have to book slots, and you have to get your sample during that slot only. So having a well defined research method, only lucky people get it. Other people have to really not waste, have to really invest a lot of time defining their research method. Once it's defined, the progress will be faster. Solve the research problem, definitely, but it doesn't start at the beginning of your research. You solve the research problem at the end. So at the beginning of the research, it's start with the number of predefined objectives.
Probably, if it would have been the research problem, then it would have been right.
Yeah, correct. Even I don't agree completely with predefined objectives, because you don't have a lot of when you're starting research. So, but out of these four options, that seemed the most relevant. So that's why I said the other three definitely don't match. Yeah. Correct. The next question. Doing research requires drafting a working outline, which is, what do you think is a working outline? Anybody? Read the options and tell me.
I will read.
Okay. So the answer will be B. Having a predefined and clear-cut objective, still very difficult. You might have read a lot of papers, and you might think that this is the hypothesis that I have, and I think this is my objective predefined. Some people might have. As I said, that when I say that this is not the correct answer, please don't think this is a law. Some people might be some people might have started reading about the research problem much before than you. Some people, different people have different capacities. I'll take a lot of time to read a paper and understand it. I know people who read it, who glance at it once and get the gist of the paper, but I take a lot of time. But none of us are none of us represent the population, because it's a spectra. Some people might take a lot of time, some people might take a lot less time, but all of us have different capacities. See, so there can't be a proper answer that reading a research paper takes 2 minutes, or reading a research paper takes 2 hours. So similarly, having a predefined and clear cut objective generally doesn't happen. Some people might be very might have started their work very early. I had a senior who had very predefined goals in her PhD, because when she was doing her masters, she had worked on an exactly similar problem. Just the difference was she had worked on a parasite, but in her PhD she was working on a bacteria. Otherwise, the infection and everything, she had worked on exactly similar problem. That's why when she changed to PhD, she had, from the beginning only, she had very predefined and clear-cut objective. But that's not the case for me or some of my friends. We have to figure out every day. We go to the lab and we have to figure out our experiments every day. So we are not that lucky to be working on similar projects, because I worked on a completely different project during my masters, and I'm working on a completely different project during my PhD. It took me months to learn some of the techniques, and I'm still not confident in most techniques that are not in our lab, that we have in common instrument facility. So yes, it depends from person to person. So having a predefined and clear-cut objective is not exactly the working outline, because you don't have that kind of clear-cut mindset when you're starting out. Planning to get answers for what, why, and where type of question. This is the more relevant, because when you're starting out, you have a question and you say that this in this paper they have mentioned that this treatment does this to the cell, but why is this happening and where is this happening? That I will figure out. So when you're starting your PhD, this might seem vague, but when you're starting your research project, why I'm saying PhD, when you're starting a research project, maybe masters, PhD, bachelor's, anything, these are the very vague questions that you have in your mind when you're starting out, and when you're drafting the working outline, basically the flow chart. So that is why B is the most relevant. C is having a clear-cut idea about the research problem solution. Definitely no. Even super brilliant people don't have that. You should not have that. That will make you biased. So you don't have a clear-cut idea about the solution. You might have a clear-cut idea about your objectives, but solution, no. So B is more relevant to the question. So that is why I said B. Next question. Research objectives fall into a number of categories that include planning to get answers for what, why, and where, considering the logic behind the methods, formulative concept and planning, and the last option is exploratory, descriptive, diagnostic, experimentation methods. Anybody? Anybody?
Research objective from a number of categories.
Sorry?
It is a multiple choice question or one?
It can be multi. I can get what you are coming from. It was where I got the question from. It was like one. You have to select one, but I also get why you think it's a multiple choice question. So see, that's what I was saying. This course is not exactly like physics chemistry course that you'll have one answer. You can have a lot of different answers based on the way you think. So yeah.
I think it is C, formulative concept,
That okay.
planning of research
Okay.
methods. That's what
Okay,
I think.
that can also be the correct answer, but there it's actually the D option, because they are saying if you are describing, if you are basically classifying your research into categories, it's said that it's more, these four options make more sense, because one kind of research is exploratory. You're basically exploring whatever is happening. So I can relate exploratory to the beginning of your PhD. When you're beginning of your project, then you're exploring whatever is happening in your work. Then it's more, then it turns more descriptive. Then if you start getting some kind of data, you have to interpret that, you have to describe why you're getting that. Then it comes, then diagnostic is also another category, when you have to do some kind of diagnosis based on your data, when you have to analyze your data and you have to you have to provide some kind of diagnosis. And then experimentation methods, experimentation though is very self-explanatory, obviously experimentation is required. So this is the answer. But formulative, concept, and planning for research methods is, formulative, concept, and planning, these are more likely steps of the steps of research,
Yeah, not the
research
category.
progress steps.
Yeah,
Categories,
not the
categories will be more exploratory, descriptive. So
Yeah.
the other three other three options are also correct, but they are more of steps or
Steps and methods.
steps of the
Yeah.
research. Categories, I think D makes more sense as a category, as the number of categories. Next question. So formulative research studies is a category of research that anybody? So yeah, so achieve new insights of a concept. So what does when you're formulating something, out of all the four options, the first option, which is achieving new insights of a concept, makes more sense, because you're not analyzing characteristics, you're not determining any frequency or whatever, you're not determining the reproducibility, you're not testing relationship between variables. These other three options are very specific options. Achieving new insights of a concept is when you're thinking about a particular research area and you're trying to formulate the way to get into it. Basically, you're reading about a concept and you're trying to get more perspective on that concept. That is how formulative research studies move forward. So that is why formulative research studies is more inclined towards putting out a new perspective, putting out a new notion, that is achieving new insights of a concept. So the first option makes more sense. So next question is diagnostic research, and it's very just see the term diagnostic and you might be able to think which one might be the right answer. Diagnostic, diagnosis, anything. I'm audible, right? I'm still in the meeting.
Analyze the characteristic of something.
You mean option B? Okay.
Option
Anybody
B.
else? So when you're diagnostic research basically relates to diagnosis. So when you're diagnosing, I think analyze characteristics, I get where you're coming from, but determining the frequency with which something occurs is also true. When you're performing some kind of diagnostic studies, suppose cells, or you take some samples from different hospitals and you perform experiments. So when you're diagnosing, perhaps suppose there is a person who's infected with a particular virus and you take that sample and you study it and you see these are the changes that are happening at the cell level. Okay, so then will you be able to say that this person, will you be able to diagnose that this person is infected by the virus immediately? No, because you need to check if these changes are happening to the other people also who are infected by the virus. Only one result doesn't make any sense. What if that whatever was happening inside the cell was due to another comorbidity that the person might have? Suppose a person is infected with SARS-CoV-2, so some things in his cells, some things in his body are not working properly, and but that doesn't mean that you'll check all that and you'll say that these things are not working properly, that means that person is infected with SARS-CoV-2. You might get to know later that person used to have diabetes, that person might have asthma, that person might have myocardial infarction, but basically heart problems. So that person might be having other comorbidities. So you have to check samples from other people who are infected with SARS-CoV-2. Preferably not people with comorbidities, people with different age groups, people with from different genders. Then you'll be able to give out a diagnosis that okay, this person had diabetes and then this person got infected with SARS-CoV-2. So both these acted as comorbidities and these are the results that happening. Then you might check in another person who's having diabetes and who's having SARS-CoV-2. So when you're giving out a diagnosis, it's very important to determine the frequency with which something happens. If the things that are not happening properly in his body is also happening in some other person's body, then it is a more clear indication. You have to do a lot of test samples from a lot of people. I'm just saying in the respect of 2, but that is a more clear indication that this person is diagnosed with that disease. So this diagnostic research basically relates to the determining the frequency with which something occurs. Then we move on to the next question, that is descriptive research. Anybody? So first option and third option are gone. So you have only 2 options now. Okay, so this is the analyze characteristics of something. When you're doing descriptive research, you also have to analyze characteristics of a particular change in the body. So the person is infected with a virus and you're analyzing you are basically you're basically monitoring the changes. Monitoring if a person is showing, suppose allergy, someone is showing a allergy. It recently happened to one of my friends, so I know someone is showing allergy, epiphylactic shock to a food item. But whatever that person is allergic to, that person did not have that kind of food in the last 48 hours. So even the doctors were confused that why is this person showing these rashes and stuff, and it was very immediate. So then the doctor was monitored the person for I think 3-4 hours, and then she asked the patient everything what the patient has eaten in the last 48-72 hours. They asked her to actually remember, did you eat something that you're not supposed to, are you intolerant to something you're not supposed to, and everything she had eaten she wrote it down. But then they still could not figure out, because all the things she had eaten were very safe for her. She had eaten all those things before. Then what is the thing, why is she showing this kind of allergic response? So then what the doctor figured out, or what the patient also told us, that she might be allergic to some different kind of allergen that she doesn't know yet. And she doesn't stay in India, she stays in Australia. So in India I've not heard this thing happening in real, I have not heard this thing happening much. I don't know why people in India are really less allergic to stuff. I don't know, I've met really less people who are allergic to some things. But so this girl was allergic to a lot of things, and apparently she's allergic to one more thing and she still doesn't know what it is. So the doctor had to keep her, monitor her for 3 to 4 hours, and then they let her go. And then the conclusive conclusion what they could get from that monitoring session was that you might be allergic to something that you still don't know yet. You might have developed it in the last 1 year or so, or there might be some changes happening in your body, so you might be getting allergic to a new thing that you probably were not allergic before. So that is when you're analyzing something, characteristics of something. So when the doctor was monitoring the patient, I believe he or she was writing down the changes that were happening with respect to her behavior, I guess, with respect to the rashes that was happening on her body, or whatever the girl was. They asked her questions, how do the allergic reaction generally show up? Some people get rashes, some people get some other kind of response. So when you're analyzing the characteristics of something, that is more kind of descriptive research. So you're analyzing and you're writing, you're describing the characteristics of something. So that's how descriptive research is more relevant towards. So that's how it will be option B. Okay. So the other option was experimentation. Sorry. It's not here, but the other experimentation research will be test relationship between variables. So that question is not here, but experimentation research studies is a category of research that aims to test the relationship between variables. So descriptive is analyzing characteristics, formulative is achieving new perceptions, newer insights, diagnostic is determining the frequency, and experimentation is basically you perform an experiment, you get the results, you put it on a graph, you're basically testing the relationship between variables. When you put something on a graph, when you're checking, suppose percentage of cell viability with respect to a drug, you put cell viability percentage on the y-axis, you put drug concentration on the x-axis, and you check key as you increase the drug concentration, how is your cell viability increasing or not increasing, is your cell viability staying the same or is cell viability going down. So when you have conducted an experiment, you have put that experiment on the graph and you are checking if I don't know why I'm getting kicked out of the meeting because there's some kind of internet issue. I'm audible, right?
Yes.
Yeah, there's some kind of network issue and I realized it still quite later. But don't worry about it. I'll be uploading this video on YouTube after the session is done. So you can check out the things, and if you have any doubts, you can always mail me or we can discuss in the next session as well. So I finished this question, right? How much did you guys hear before I got kicked out of the meeting? This one was done, diagnostic research studies.
Your screen is not visible.
Screen is not visible. Okay. So I'm doing it my phone data and my phone data is not really stable. I don't know what has happened to the Wi-Fi here. I'm really sorry for the inconvenience. Is my screen visible now? Yeah, so did we do this question? Like, did you guys hear it? The
Yes.
diagnostic research one? This one done. This was done, right?
This was done. We went to the descriptive research.
Also, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this was also done.
Okay, great. So there's another question that's not written here that I wanted to say. That was the experimentation research. Experimentation research means testing the relationship between two variables. So, for example, if I am checking out the effect of a drug on cells, I'll basically conduct experiment. Then I'll plot a graph. I'll plot the concentration of drug on the x-axis. I'll plot the percentage of cell viability on the y-axis, and then I'll check as and when I increase the drug concentration, what is happening to the percentage of cells, what is happening to the cell health, basically what is happening to the percentage of cells viable. Is it decreasing? Are the cells getting killed, or is nothing happening, or is there a plateau, like is the drug not doing anything to the cells? So that is how when we conduct experiment, we get the results, we analyze it, we put it on a graph, and we basically test relationship between the different variables. One variable is drug concentration, the other variable is cell viability. So that is why experimentation research is means testing relationship between two variables. Okay, so this question was not here, but I still wanted to explain. Research is considered to be more than just a way of skills. It is, anybody? Hello, you are here, right? Or am I? Okay. So I'll tell. I'm just scared that I'm getting kicked out and I'm not able to realize because my screen is showing the PPT. I'm not able to see the Google Meet at all. Okay. So the answer will be a way of critical thinking about professional aspects of related to your work or for related to your work, basically. So obviously the other questions also make sense. So planning to what, why and where type of questions to determine a goal. Very true. A way of critical thinking about, so when you're starting out research, mostly in interviews, professors have a tendency, professors ask questions that are not really theoretical based. Some professors might, but other professors try to ask application based questions. But I have faced in my interviews, there were professors who were like, you have to do PCR and you have to go to a party right after, but you don't have the PCR machine in your lab. How will you do PCR? This kind of questions, they try to figure out if you can critically think, if you can think out of the box, even without the necessary resources at your beck and call, are you able to perform experiments? So and they were pushing me towards the answer. They were saying, what is the concept of PCR? The temperature, why do we need the PCR machine? Temperature fluctuations are maintained in the PCR machine. At one point we need the temperature to be really high to basically separate the DNA strands, and then we want it to be really low so the primers can attach. So if you're not from biology background, I'm really sorry, you'll not be able to understand, but if you are, you will understand that when we do PCR, we need different temperatures at different time points. So that's how the professors are pushing me towards the right answer, that if you don't have the machine, how will you conduct the experiment? So that is what critical thinking is all about. They try to figure out, they try to see that even without the resources available in the lab, proper resources, will you be able to think outside the box? Will you be able to do what you wanted to do? Other options also make sense. Research methods used within the research methodology and discovering the relationship between variables, very true. But research, if we are thinking about the way, what does research actually mean? Research does not really mean conducting experiments. Even technicians conduct experiment. The industry people who are doing the same thing again and again, they are also conducting experiments. But when we talk about scientists, in the sense that you have to think about a problem and you have to think how it works, maybe we are not that good in technical things, we don't know how to instruments well, but we have a different way of thinking about things. That is what research is. Research is considered more than just a way of skills, it's a way of critical thinking. So yeah, thinking is more important in research than handling instruments. Handling instruments you will learn as and when it's required, but critical thinking is very important. The next question, research aims for finding answers to questions. It implies, anybody?
All of the above.
Correct. So using valid and reliable methods and techniques, definitely. An unbiased design, as I said, when you're starting out research, you should really have an unbiased outlook towards the work that you're performing. You cannot be biased, you should not be biased, and there should be a framework of philosophies, definitely. So basically research aims, it implies all of the above. So next question, research philosophies refer to of approaches and discipline, correct, procedure in the discipline, ideas to discover, objectives to consider in the research process. Anybody?
Approaches.
Correct procedures in the discipline.
Okay. Anybody else? It talks about approaches and the discipline. As I said, the other options are also quite relevant. But when we're talking about the basic philosophy, when you're talking about research in general, we basically talk about the way of critical thinking and how to approach a problem. More than procedure, I think approaching a problem is more necessary. Procedure you'll figure out. Procedure you'll figure out in the time that you are investing to study research papers and all that. But approach, how do you approach a problem? Can you think outside the box? Can you approach the problem in the right way based on your previous experience, based on your previous research experience? So that is what the philosophy of research is all about. Otherwise, objectives and ideas and procedures, all of these matter a lot in research, obviously. But the approach, when you're talking about philosophy, research philosophy, I think the approach in the discipline makes more sense. Next, next question, in order to make the research reliable, it requires that we have 4 options. Anybody? Read the options carefully.
Your screen has not changed with the same question.
Okay, now is the screen changed?
No, it has got stuck. Now it has changed.
Okay, yeah. Thank you for saying. I'm just clueless what is happening because of the net connection. Sorry, really sorry. I'll be putting everything on YouTube, so you'll be able to see. Even if you missed everything out, I'm recording. So I realized that at some point of time I got kicked out of the Google Meet 2 times. I think it happened, and you couldn't hear me, but I was explaining, and I have the video. I'm recording the entire thing, so I'll upload the entire thing on YouTube, so you can listen to that particular portion. You can go to that particular portion and listen. If you have any questions, we can discuss in the next class. I hope the net will be fine. Yeah. So
So the B
okay.
would be the answer for this.
Okay.
In order to make the research reliable, it requires quantitative and qualitative methods to be
Okay.
used.
Okay.
I think A should be the answer,
Okay.
according to me.
Okay. Okay. I think A, B, C, three of them make sense. The D option doesn't make any sense. A solution to the research problem should be known in advance. The D option doesn't make any sense. But 1, 2, 3, I think three of them make a proper sense. There should not be any deliberate attempt to either conceal the, definitely not. You should never conceal any data. That is basically not right, unethical. So deliberate attempt, there should not be deliberate attempt to either conceal or highlight something. Quantitative and qualitative methods are to be used. Yeah, it requires, I think, scientific research requires quantitative and qualitative methods. If you're talking about some other kind of research, social sciences, and I'm not sure about those art subjects, I'm not really sure the kind of research that happens, so can't really speak for that. But scientific science requires quantitative and qualitative methods, definitely. Repeatability and accuracy is also very important for the quality of measurement procedures used. Accuracy is very important. Repeatability is so very important. Your experiment should be reproducible. So
I
that's
think when the research reliability is being asked, I think this will be the
correct,
accurate
correct,
answer.
correct, correct.
Because when you say reliability,
Huh.
then
Correct,
probably
correct.
reliability and accuracy are the
Yes, I was just going to say this. Thank you for putting this point here. You might have seen that many papers get published and then they get retracted. Have you seen? There are a lot of instances where many papers in very, very popular, like very high impact factor journals, they get published and then they get retracted because apparently someone else has raised a question and then another person has raised a question, and there was apparently there was some strong essence to the questions that they have raised, and the authors were not able to prove that they have done correct work, or they were not able to reproduce the data, and then a lot of stuff can happen. I really don't know the exact technicalities of this, but as you said, when you're talking about reliability, repeatability, yes, repeatability and accuracy, especially reproducibility, matters a lot. Because when people will raise questions, you'll have to reproduce the data, so that works matters the most. The other two options that you two said, they also make sense, but when the word reliable is there in the question, I think option C makes the most sense. Option D though is not correct at all. Solution of the research problem cannot be known in advance. Yeah. Okay, this is two. Next question. The main difference is between research and non-research is the type of skills we use to discover something, the utilization of acceptable scientific methodology to solve problems to create new knowledge, the quantitative and qualitative methods that are to be used.
all the above.
Okay. Basically, all of the above also kind of makes sense. I would not say it doesn't make sense, but the utilization of acceptable scientific methodology to solve problems. So when you're talking about research, the first thing that we do is we read papers and we try to find out what has already been published, what work has already been done in the research graph. So when we try to differentiate, so we'll say that the utilization of acceptable scientific methodology, what kind of accepted papers have, what kind of work has been done, what were the scientific methodologies and materials and everything followed in those papers, what did they do, what kind of experiments did they perform, and how did that experiments lead to the results that they are trying to show, and how did those results solve the problems. So when you're talking about research, it incorporates everything starting from wet lab experiments to all the things, all the readings that you do. So B option is utilization of acceptable scientific knowledge methodology to solve problems to create new knowledge. That makes more sense because you already read about something that has been published, that's old knowledge that's already published, and you use that, you take forward the work and you try to publish new knowledge. So B works, B makes sense. Next question. Biased research refers to anybody? I talked a lot about biased research today. Anybody?
Drawing conclusions by introducing one's own vested interest.
Correct. Biased research, you already have a bias is like you're inclined
Opinion.
towards. Like I'm conducting an experiment, and from the even before starting the experiment, I'm saying that this drug will change the cell morphology. And I'm thinking in that way only. I'm having this biased mindset in my head. I'm thinking about this only. So I'm drawing conclusion based on my own interest. I'm thinking that if I'm able to prove this, that will be a really good paper. So that's my own vested interest, and I'm trying to draw conclusions. So that's biased research. That's really not helpful when you're doing research. You need to keep an open mind. So definitely, as you said, it's correct. Drawing conclusions by introducing one's own vested interest is correct. This we did already. Descriptive research. I think this is another different type of questions, but we still did it. Descriptive research is the type of research that is made for performing the basic or pure research. It's a theoretical research. Is intended for finding some solution to the problem considered. Includes fact-finding inquiries and surveys. Uses available information as a base to make the further critical evaluation. Anybody? Okay, I'll explain. It includes fact-finding inquiries and surveys. Like when I was explaining, descriptive research is basically monitoring someone, basically analyzing the repercussions of an event, analyzing the consequence of any kind of treatment. So it's basically fact-finding, inquiries, and surveys. Surveys can also work. Surveys basically work for other types of research. For scientific research, it's basically fact-finding inquiries. You monitor human beings, you monitor cells, you monitor your sample, and you try to find out try to basically analyze the characteristics of the data. That's what we did. The last question was all about regarding descriptive research. So descriptive research includes fact-finding inquiries and surveys, definitely. Analytical research is the type of research that, anybody? I'm still there, right, in the meet?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay. I'll say. So analytical. Yes, say.
No problem.
So
I was thinking that
huh.
intended for finding some solution
The
to
problem considered. It can be. It that also works out. Analyze, but uses available as a base to make. So when I chose the fourth option, I was mostly thinking like analytical is basically analyzing. So I'm already analyzing whatever has already been published, and I'm keeping that as the introduction, as the base, and I'm then making more further conclusion. I'm performing more experiments and then making more further conclusion for further critical evaluation. So that's how I thought when I selected option B. But intended for finding some solution to the problem considered, that's also not wrong. Analytical, I was thinking analytical equals analyze previous data and then work on that data in that way. So yeah, that intended for finding some solution to the problem considered. So that also works. As I said, there's no right and wrong answer, proper right and wrong answer in this course, unless it's very objective. Applied research is the type of research that
I think C is
this also, I think B and D both will be probable. B and D both. I think applied research also uses information from basic research and puts them to use for applied sciences. D is also relevant. B is also relevant. Is intended for finding some solution to the problem considered. There's a problem and you're intending to find a solution to that problem. So very much probable. And D also works out. You have some knowledge from basic research and you're trying to put that in place to do work on applied research. Very possible. Then next question, fundamental research. What do you think is fundamental research?
pure and it is theoretical research.
Anybody else? Yeah, it's fundamental research is basically basic sciences. So it's basically theoretical research, more inclined towards theoretical research. Applied research is more inclined towards applied sciences. Like there's some basic knowledge that you have and then you use that to work on problems that you have read in literature papers or literature review and all that. But fundamental research is more about basic research. It's more theoretical. So yeah, you're right. It's made for performing the basic or pure research. It's a theoretical research.
Rupa, can you please mute your...
Yes, sure. Thank you so much for me. So then research can be classified from three perspectives. Anybody would like to try? All of these questions are very, like, you can, these questions are very confusing. Like when you see all the options, you like this can be also true, this also can be true.
Philosophy's validity and unbiasedness.
Anybody else? Philosophy's validity and unbiased seems relevant. I thought about application objectives and inquiry mode used. Philosophy, validity, and unbiased. That also comes under research. But when I thought about when I chose option D, I was like, when we talk about research, we have an inquiry mode. We inquire about something, then we select the objectives, then we apply those to our experiments. So I think both of these work out. Research philosophies we have, we need to validate our research definitely, and our research needs to be unbiased. True. So that also works out. You're also correct. So the research process of certain characteristics, one of the statements below are not a part of the characteristics. Anybody?
Rigorous and valid.
Okay. Anybody else?
Controlled and systematic.
Statements below are not part of quantitative and qualitative. Okay. So when we are talking about scientific research in general, scientific research, then quantitative and qualitative is a part of research, obviously. But if we are talking about research in general, like if you're also taking the art subjects, I don't think quantitative and qualitative works out. So out of the 4 options, controlled and systematic will be there, critical and empirical, rigorous and valid will also, valid is important. But quantitative and qualitative, I think these 2 options don't really work out for art subjects. I'm not sure how they do research. For scientific communication, definitely all 4 options make sense. Quantitative and qualitative, we need to have data.
When we talk about art subject, then for the literature and all,
Yeah, I'm not sure how the research in that domain goes really. Literature
Okay.
review and everything, obviously they also need to read a lot of stuff, but when they're writing their own thesis, because they don't, I'm not sure if they do experiments, I'm not sure about that. So in that case, quantitative and qualitative data these data don't make any sense. Like in science, we perform experiments, be it computational, be it experimental, we have some kind of quantitative data, we have some kind of qualitative data, definitely. But in case of socials, other kind of research, arts or something else, I'm not sure if that makes sense. The other 3 options make sense for both the kinds of research. You need to be controlled and systematic, critical and empirical, and valid. There should be validity to everything that you are trying to show. So in that sense, quantitative, out of the 4 options, quantitative and qualitative at least made sense for the non-science subjects. I'm not sure, but the other 3 kind of made sense. So for research process to be for being a characteristic of research process, so that's why. So a good qualitative problem statement defines the independent and dependent variables, conveys a sense of emerging design, specifies the research hypothesis to be tested, specifies the relationship between variables that the researcher expects to find. What do you think?
C.
Specifies a research hypothesis to be tested. Okay. Anybody else?
Good qualitative.
I think B from my side.
Conveys a sense of emerging design. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So a good when you're talking about qualitative problem statement, whoever said conveys a sense of emerging design, can you explain why did you choose this option?
Yeah, sure.
Uh-huh.
Like if you compare it from the other examples, such as take consideration A, like the case of independent and dependent variable. This is sort of a quantitative thing, right?
Correct.
Because I'm from a statistics background, so I know.
Correct.
And the same is for the C and D. Like D and A are basically like same thing.
Correct. Variables.
Yes, exactly.
Correct.
The same thing defined in 2 different ways. So A and D are definitely not the answer. C is like the research hypothesis testing, and that has to be concluded with the help of some quantity. Like you need to compare it with the quantity, and then only you can decide whether you can accept that hypothesis or not. So ultimately, B remains the answer, which is like more related to a quality and
qualitative. Correct.
Yeah,
Correct.
Exactly.
I think explained it beautifully.
Thank you.
You're correct. It conveys, when you're talking about, since the word qualitative is there, it is more, I think that's brilliant how we eliminated the other options. Those are more relate more to the quantitative aspect. For the qualitative aspect, I think option B makes more sense. Conveys a sense of emerging design. The others are more inclined towards the qualitative aspect. this I think it's not covered, so I will skip this question. We'll talk about this question later sometime. Yeah, this one. The statement of purpose in a research study should identify the design of the study. Sorry, which
B.
one? B.
D.
B or D? B.
D.
Okay, describe the study. Okay, anybody else?
I would like to go with B.
B. Identify the intent or objective of the
Yeah.
study. Yeah, so B is more specific. Describe the study is can be a lot of things. It's also not wrong, but when we are thinking about checking from or selecting from these options, I think B seems more specific and more relevant to the question, because when you're writing an SOP, the first thing that you need to is you have to explain a little bit about the research problem, then why do you intend to solve the problem, and what is the objective of the study. So I think
I said B only actually.
Acha, you were saying B only. I also heard B first. That's why I asked. Yeah.
B.
Yeah. So B makes more sense because intent and objective is mentioned. Identify the design of the study. B is more specific. Specify the type of people to be used in the study. No, it doesn't make sense. It's not that relevant. Describe the study. Obviously, when you're writing an SOP, you are describing the study. That's for sure. You are definitely describing study, but how are you describing the study? You should write things that are more relevant and more specific. So in that case, both of you were right. It would be B. Identify the intent or objective of the study. So why is the statement "What are the effects of extracurricular activities on cognitive development of school age children" not a good statement of a quantitative research question?
D or
Which one? B.
last one.
Last one, D. Okay. Anybody else? Okay. Anybody would like to try? I can wait for a few more seconds. You can read. Okay.
D will be the answer.
D. Yes. Yes, correct. D. You said D, right? Last option.
Yeah, D.
Yeah. So both of you are right, because the statement is not specific enough. When you're talking about a statement like this, you need to be more specific to give the reader an idea of what the variables that are being tested. It's more of a vague statement. Extracurricular activities on cognitive development of school age children. You're not saying school age children it's a huge range. You're not talking about the range of school age children, like from I think 3 years to 15 16 years people are in school. 17 years I think, class 12 to 17. So it's a huge range of students. There are gender differences also matter. Then cognitive development with what respect the what are the extracurricular activities that you're talking about? Extracurricular activities is a huge domain. What are you talking about? Sports? Are you talking about singing, dancing? What extracurricular activities are you talking about? So when you're talking in the science language, you need to be very specific. You cannot be vague. So I think that's why the last option makes more sense, because the statement is not specific enough to provide what are the variables that are being tested. Like how do we test? Even if we conduct a study, how do we test the variables? Like how do we relate what will we plot on the x-axis, what on the y-axis? So I think that is not specific enough. So I think option D makes more sense. So I'll move to the another question. So it's a qualitative research question. These are the four options. Anybody?
Both A and B.
Okay. Anybody else? Yeah, both A and B are correct. So it asks a question about some process or phenomenon. It's not quantitative, it's qualitative, and it's generally an open-ended question. So both A and B are correct. Next question. According to the text, which of the following orders is recommended in the flowchart of the development of a research idea? Anybody? When you're writing a SOP, statement of purpose, this kind of this thing is very relevant. Anybody? So this is the last question that we'll do today. If Anybody can answer. Just try. Okay, I'll answer. So first you think about a topic. You cannot go on the internet and be very vague about what you're doing. You have to think about a particular topic. The topic can be quite broad, but at least you have to think about a topic, anything that you're interested in. Are you interested in RNA, like are you interested in antimicrobial resistance? Are you interested in CRISPR-Cas9? It's a Nobel winning technique, by the way, CRISPR-Cas9. What are you interested in exactly? So you need to have a topic at least. You cannot go on the internet and search for biology questions or chemistry questions like that. At least you have a topic. Then you read stuff, you read literature, you read papers, you read articles, and then you figure out a problem. Then you get a research problem. You ask a question. Basically you see that this is the work that has already been done, but there's a gap over here, so that's a research problem. Then you figure out the purpose, like if I am going to talk about this research problem, if I am going to invest my time, energy, money on reagents and everything, basically time, mostly time and energy, if I am going to invest my time and energy on this problem, then what is the purpose behind it? Will solving this problem matter? Will this matter in the long run? That's a research purpose. Then you define a research question. You have figured out the topic, you have found the problem, you have found the purpose. Now you properly define a research question. This is the question that I am aiming to answer. And then you write the hypothesis that if this thing happens, then that might be happening. That is, that if this thing happens, that will decrease this thing. If this thing happens, that will increase that thing. So that is the hypothesis that you are talking about. So this is how the flowchart works out in the research methodology area. So we are done for today. Anybody wants to ask anything? Do you have any doubts or anything? Don't worry, I'll upload the video. So if you have missed any explanation in the middle, I'll be explaining in the, I have already explained. I'll upload on YouTube, so you'll be able to understand. So anybody has any? Yeah, Mayur, you have raised your hand.
Yeah,
Yes.
I would like, I already know that we have passed 8, but I would take a couple of minutes.
Yeah, sure.
Is it possible for you to go back to like on question number 6? I think it was law versus theory.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah. Wait.
6 sir.
Yeah, actually the numbering is ruined over here. There are different assignments. This one.
Yeah, this one. Yeah.
Correct.
So, like the question, the current question is a well-substantiated explanation of some aspects of the natural world is.
Yeah.
Now my question is, if we are like replacing that some with every or all, so like the question becomes a substantiated explanation of all aspects or every aspect of the natural world. So in that case, will the answer be still theory, or in that case it could be the law?
Okay. When I talked about theory, I focused more on the well substantiated part. So what I said was, it's well substantiated, I can understand, but when you're talking about law is a very strong word, right? Like Newton's law, Mendel's law, there are very strong word that. So law is like, it's beyond questioning, like it is a law now. Nobody questions that why a reaction has an equal and opposite reaction, because now at this point of time it is non-questionable. You cannot question that kind of thing. So I focus more of the well substantiated part, and that's how I thought theory might be more relevant to this type of question of some aspect of the natural world to all aspect or every aspect of the natural world.
In the tutorials, when they talked about law, it is something which is being tried and tested by many people, and it has been well defined. So then it becomes law.
Correct.
That is what.
Correct. That way, if you say, continue.
Yeah, so that actually was the question, because when you replace some with all, then it clearly specifies that it is true for every aspect of the natural world. Okay, so
then it might.
According to me, yeah, it should fall into like law.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, that was the thing.
Correct. Both of you are right. Even when I was saying, even I was like, when I say well substantiated, even that means it has been well talked about, well researched and stuff. And law is a very strong word. Law is a much stronger word than theory, definitely. But yeah, if you're talking about of all aspect, like it has been tried and tested, and I can agree to the law part. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll still think more about it, but I think both of you guys make sense. Yeah.
Sure.
This
Thank
makes
you.
sense. Thank you. Anybody else?
Ashi, I just wanted to ask these assignments, what we get, any idea on that? That how is the scoring? Do we get to know at that time or we get to know
Scoring,
later?
I'm not really sure about that because the course instructor Ganesh sir and his TA from did you guys attend the live session? I think recently there was a live session by Ganesh sir only.
Yeah, it was there. I couldn't
I
attend.
think it's on YouTube also. So if you did not attend, you can still see it.
Yeah, it was a very
Yeah, yeah.
short session and hardly
Huh.
few questions were there in that.
Okay, okay. So I'm not really sure about the points thing because that only NPTEL staff might be able to say.
Okay,
So
fine.
if you have any doubts, you just mail them. I think they'll be very prompt in replying. I think think the this week's assignment, week 1 and week 2 assignments are already live, right? 8th February
Yeah,
or
yeah,
something is the deadline.
correct.
So once the deadline is over, maybe we can discuss those problems also next Monday. We can
Yeah,
discuss those also.
This has covered the week one, right? What you
This
have.
is the week zero. This week zero practice
Okay.
problems.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that is
they're
problem.
these are this year's practice problems, and some of them are last year's practice problems, and some of them I found randomly on the internet on
Okay.
professional scientific communication. So
Yeah,
yeah,
because these are mixed concepts
yeah,
which I
yeah,
took.
yeah. These
Now
are
I
mixed.
haven't gone through a couple of one or two questions which
Yeah,
were.
yeah, yeah. So these are all mixed. So eighth, I am not sure about the deadline. I think it's 8th, but still check once and make sure you submit everything within time. So maybe next Monday, same time we'll have same link. We'll have another session. We can discuss that also. And you also let me know because this course is not very, how will I say, not very knowledge based. See, so all of us can have a good discussion, like the question on law and theory. So maybe you guys can tell me what we can do in the next session apart from discussing the assignment question. Maybe we can do any kind of fun activity if you guys can think anything like that related to this course, professional communication. Maybe we can try that out also. Also,
Yeah, sure.
I'll upload the video on YouTube. So I know beach mein I was talking something and I didn't realize that you guys were not here. I was not in the meeting. I'll upload the YouTube video and the link will be shared so you'll be able to see. Any doubts? Next session we are there Monday.
Yeah.
Monday we are there.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Ashi.
you. Thank you
It
so
was
much. Thank you
nice
so much for
learning.
being
Yeah.
so patient for 2 hours. I know online interactions are really hard, but thank you so much. Thank you. Any doubt, you guys can mail regarding the NPTEL thing, points thing, do mail the NPTEL staff. They'll be able to give clear answers. I'm not really sure about how that works out. So
Thank you.
thank you so
for
much.
your time.
Thank you so much for being so kind. Thank you. I'll stop the session. Thank you, Mayur. Thank you for your question. It was lovely interacting with all of you. And thank you, Josna, for admitting everyone. I think she left, but still, thank you. Okay, I'll close the meeting. Next Monday, same link, same time.